In the early 1990s, a game for the DOS system was released by a developer named Sean Puckett. It went by the name Helious. The game was a shareware and it was not well known. There were other games that was very similar to Hellas known as Hellas 2. Despite Hellas 2 sounding like a sequel, it very much wasn't. And what Sean did was split the original Hellas into two and sell the later half as Hellas 2 for $24.99 in USD. Oddly enough, both games worked just fine for Windows 32-bit system. Not much was known about Sean Puckett himself. The only thing known him online was a very outdated company, Albino Frog Software, and his website. The company itself was originally known as Night Sky before it explicitly renamed to Albino Frog Software. The game Helios is odd. If a player were to start up the game, the first screen would be a text story about the backstory of the game. The backstory as it follows: Helios, how to produce a game in 8 days. First off, I know you won't believe my story, and that's alright. You don't have to believe it. And I know what happened, and thank God enough for me. Besides, Helios is a fun wherever you believe it on how come it became to be. I'm not the sort of person who likes UFO stories, and I usually used to scoff at all of them. Whiteley Strubber, now there's a nutcase. I think to myself, I used to watch Project Blue Book when I was a kid, but that was just TV. I watched Star Trek too, so on May 5th, 1993, UFOs were the farthest thing from my mind. But of course, when you were at least expecting it, wham, your life gets turned upside down. I usually get to bed around 3 in the morning. That night was a little stormy, unusual for Florida in May, especially 1993. A bit of lightning kicking off every now and then, and the steady hiss of the rain gargle within the gutters. The occasional car passing shining yellow headlight beams through the bedroom window. I had just closed my eyes when a low, dull hum started up, very faint far away. We live near an airport, so the throaty growl of a private plane is something we're used to, and rarely take notice of it, even when the eerie drone of the blimps is also moored by nearby common enough to warrant a look. But this was unusual. Private planes, as rule of thumb, don't fly during storms or at 3 in the morning. The blimps were certainly well tied down against the gusty wind. So what is the noise? This hum? That was growing louder? Police helicopter, maybe? They always seem to conduct the last night renaissance. Missions in my neighborhood, just then when I'm dropping off to sleep. Mayor's dog has probably gotten loose again. The light flickering in my windows seemed need to confirm this. A strong searchlight beam, apparently taking inventory from my front yard. Nothing else, fellas. No dogs, no escaped convicts. It was at this point that the fear struck me. The light, I had just realized, was green. The most brilliant green I have ever seen. No headlight was ever in that color. No searchlight would be ever green. So steady. The hum, having gradually gotten louder over the past minute, seemed to constant in low volume now. But the tone was changing. Instead of the initial drowning pinch, it seemed as if it was modulating. Variety in pitch. Slightly there I was, standing near a window, bathed in green light, listening to an otherworldly hum, coming from apparently from right overhead. What would you do? I'll tell you what I did. I ran like a man possessed, nearly killing myself, tripping over a stack of phone books on my mad rush to get to the other side of the house, to the other door outside, to safety. No way I am going to be trapped in this house with God knows whatever weirdness. It might be the spacemen, CIA, or maybe even the Illuminati. I flung open the door, and outside, there were garbage cans that could have been, was a bright staff, a shaft of greenish light, standing in the light, swathed within the mist. It was perfectly a copy of myself, with its hand outstretched as if to open the door to get out. In the movies, the hero would now go into Groucho Marx's routine to see an image if it moved the same way he did. Then he would make friends, he would learn a new alien language, draw up a treaty, and all that stuff. Instead, I fainted and fell flat face into the weeds. My last thought was, there goes the movie rights. I don't know how long I was out. Whoever does, but it was dark when I woke up. No green light, no mirror image, no burbling hum. The door was still open. The garbage cans were back where they belonged, and the rain had lessened a light drizzle, and the full moon was now peeking through the thinning clouds. I stumbled around the soggy yard in a daze. I had the vague suspicion that would be some sort of alien thing waiting for me in the house. So I didn't really want to go back inside, but the eventual realization that I was wandering around my front yard were the wee hours of the morning under a full moon with only my skivies on the certain impression on me. So rather than making a big scene, waking the neighbors up and trying to sound less of a deranged lunatic, which I probably was, and was more of a damp, frightened victim of UFO harassment, in his skives, I have peered all over the windows, looking for suspicion green glows. I didn't see anything inside, so I crept back to the door. As I made my way in, slowly listening carefully, I fired up all the lights at once with the light control system. Nothing amiss. I checked the closets, no alien ambassadors, looked in the showers, no mutants, opened all the kitchen cabinets, no extrational slime molds, no super space roaches, nothing. Everywhere I looked, zip. I was beginning to relax. I checked the computer room, turned on all the computers, and made sure all the drives were okay. Perfect. The data my latest projects were safe. Much more relaxed now, I delayed the stress syndrome kicking in, and I got a sudden incredible case of shakes. My heart started to pound, my knees got all weak, and I sunk into the chair, and instantly right out of leapt, and like an 800-volt cat, I always leave my chair tucked under the desk, but it held in the middle of the room when I needed to come in. I grabbed up the nearest blunt object, my VCR remote. I scanned the room intentionally. I don't know what I planned to do with the remote, but there was, and whatever happened to me, I wanted to die with a weapon in my hand. I kicked the chair away, and it swirled into the corner. I stood for many moments, listening, looking, but nothing moved. Nothing happened. The bright eye of my computer monitor patiently glared at me, almost seeming to say, "What are you up to?" I warily wandered over the cabinets around, and looking and hooking my foot under the door, I opened each one. Junk, just as like I left it. The shelves of books appeared to be undisturbed. My desk drawers I opened with a back scratcher at 3 places, a mismatch of printouts and faxes. Nothing looked under the desk, just dust bunnies. Hell, I felt like an idiot. All this paranoia, because I left the chair out for once in my life, I sat heavily into it and wheeled up the computer on the keyboard. In the cracks between the keys were traces of green fluid. On the desk drive and handle, I bolted my feet once more. I searched the whole house once again with a flashlight, this time checking each and every cranny. Nothing, nowhere. Just traces of green slime on the keyboard and the disk drive. Okay, so this UFO roared up in my house at 3 in the morning in the middle of the thunderstorm. Scares me till I faint, and the only evidence I have is some rapidly evaporating green glop on my computer. And what's this? A newly directed on the hard drive. A collection of files in it. Right, sure. Aliens brought me some files, probably in Stellar software, right? I copied the files into the disk, deleted them from the hard drive, and did a complete systems check, virus check, disk integrity check, everything. Nothing was wrong. I go over to the testing machine. I punch up the files on the desk. No read me. Why am I not surprised? There was a bunch of source files and one .exe file. I don't mind running through strange things on the test machine. That's what it was for. So I fired it up. What I then got was a very similar to what you now have been seeing in Helious, but in the incredibly strange, surreal game. No scoring, no words, just some weird symbols. I showed it to some friends and told them where I had got it. They quite disbelieved in my story, but they did like the game and had never seen it or anything like it before. Someone had suggested I uploaded the board, so I decided to, but not until I tacked on the title on the screen and some good old-fashioned American experiential spirit. I divided the game into 2 segments, and now, for the first half, you can order the second half directly from me. The address is in the order form. And that's how you get a copy of Helious. I made up that name and the title screen, and it's a Van Gogh, of course, and seemed appropriate. When the player would continue, the screen would then be a tentacle, and it made of increasingly smaller cyan spears, and on top of the interlaced of the web of something gray. Surrounding the tentacle could be a color wheel made of spears and polygonal patterns of 9 colors: red, orange, yellow, light green, dark green, cyan, blue, purple, and pink. Surrounding the spears would be 9 inexplicable symbols, each their own respective and color spear. Each symbol is different. Make it a total of 9 different symbols in the background of the spears that would be descending rings, almost like a surface mine. The player would control the tentacle, moving around as if the biggest cyan spear was pinned onto the web. If the player moves to the tip of the tentacle into the directions of one colored spears with the mouse. If the player clicks on the direction of the spears, the symbol near the spear changes, turning the symbol into the spear into the clockwise direction of it. It turns out this menu is actually the screen to enter the code, the spears themselves being a level secret. To unlock the web of spears, you must play the game. To select a level, the player must point the tentacle towards one of the colored spears and hit enter. The screen would then change the data into the centered, almost like a balloon-like spear. The player would then use the arrow keys to propel the balloon forward. This method of propulsion is almost as if it was a rocket into space. The balloon blows out some sort of white gas to push it. The physics was very much like space as well, using the laws of inertia and meaning that if you propel the ball forward, it would not stop until it hit something. And in fact, it only just bounces off of it. Each level was different. Some are a couple of mazes, others are areas filled with enemies that either stick to the wall, shoot some sort of project at you, or just things that float around and target you. One thing is that similar between those 2 levels, however, is the extreme tilting that the same project or background is repeated again and again. These tiles make up for the walls and the floors of the level. The objective of the game is to go around each level and collect some sort of blue gems. When the player collects all the gems, a small flag with each player's level symbol appears. The player then moves over to this flag, and when they go over it with the balloon, it turns into one of those symbols from the main menu. This part of the symbol is a sequence on the web of spears, and then when you enter the colored spear, the rest of them are complete levels, and the final screen appears. Well, the screen is indescribable, so the only way this can be shown is throughout a photo format. The screen isn't still, usually with small, almost like sinister sounding background, while the small cyan balls are floated towards the center. This is Helious. No one knows whatever aliens actually made this game or not. No one knows if any of this is supposed to mean. The only person who has a clue about the game is Sean on Puckett, but no one knows about this guy or even if he still exists in any way of contacting him. He's extremely out of date. whatever for the game's address or the albino frog's outdated website. However, there is one question. Are we alone?